Hi, it's Llarold, and today I'm going to talk about how to play Protection Paladin in the War Within Season 2. So in writing up this script, I checked the last lines of a script I wrote for Paladin in Season 1. I guess we never put that out, and anyways, here it goes. It looks like Blizzard is already warming up the buff machine to turn Pallies into gods midway through Season 1. That would be pretty familiar territory. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they wind up proving the haters wrong. Yeah, I wound up being 100% right on that. Paladin ended Season 1 as the best tank in Mythic Plus by a massive margin, and arguably they were the number 2 tank in Raid behind Blood DK. So are they still good in Season 2? As far as I'm concerned, none of the primary reasons why they were good in Season 1 have been nerfed. So, yes, they're still great. And so let's cover some of those changes. First off, Prot Pally got a 15% ability damage increase. This is technically a nerf in the sense that, it's obviously a damage increase, right? That's a buff, I suppose. But other tanks got more of a damage increase, so Paladin did get less damage increase than the tanks that it was ahead of. And that kind of has worked out so that they're going to be I think, upper middle of the pack class in terms of Mythic Plus damage. Probably near the top, but Prot Warrior is way out in front of everybody right now. They're kind of flirting with Disaster, so I wouldn't be surprised if they get nerfed there. But either way, Pally is still going to be good on damage in Mythic Plus. Their raid damage was never really great, so they're not going to be great in terms of raid damage, but that's fine, right? They're going to be middle of the pack. They're going to be okay. Strength and Adversity is a parry chance increase. It's in the talent tree down here in the bottom left hand of the spec tree. It initially gave people just a permanent 25% parry chance increase in Mythic Plus, which is completely insane. Now it's only 15%. Still very, very strong. And then the other nerf was to Uther's Counsel. That is this talent here that gives you now 15% reduction on the cooldown of Lay on Hands, Divine Shield, Blessing of Protection, and Spell Warding. And that does stack with Unbreakable Spirit, which gives you 30% Divine Shield, Ardent Defender, and Lay on Hands cooldown reduction, and that has not been nerfed. So, ultimately, Paladin has gone from like an insane amount of cooldown reduction on Divine Shield to a good amount of cooldown reduction on Divine Shield, like just baseline without Uther's Counsel at all. It's like 3.5 minutes. Previously, it was under 2.5 minutes. Obviously, that was very strong. I think a lot of Paladins are just simply not going to take that now. It's really not a massive game changer. Refining Fire is this talent right here. Refining Fire was also nerfed slightly. This is a talent that just gave you a lot of extra damage on all of the targets hit by your Avenger Shield. It does a little bit less. So, ultimately, I think that this kind of brought Pally's damage back in line, but they haven't done anything about their group utility. They haven't done anything about Avenger Shield silences and Divine Toll and the ability to off-heal. They haven't done anything about Blessing of Sacrifice or Spell Warding or Protection or Lay on Hands or anything like that. Additionally, Templar has gotten a nice little buff here with Undisputed Ruling, which was kind of a terrible talent before. It just basically gave you a free judgment buff on the enemy. Not really anything when you would use Hammer of Light. Now instead it casts a free Shield of the Righteous and throws up a Corruption or Consecration beneath the target, in addition to that 12% haste buff. So it's a little bit better to play Templar than it used to be, and there are some other changes that have kind of shifted Templar to be, I think, the meta hero spec going into the coming season. So now let's also take a look at the tier set for Prot Paladin in Season 2, and as with all of the other specs that play tank, the 2-piece bonus is basically just you occasionally get free Guardian of Ancient Kings procs, free shield walls, and then you get a damage buff whenever that proc occurs. Kind of boring, but fine. The 4-piece bonus is a lot more interesting. While that 2-piece bonus is active, your Shield of the Righteous cast will refund Holy Power, potentially up to 3, and this seems to be evenly weighted between 1, 2, or 3, so 33% chance of each, just for my testing. And then those casts will also extend the duration of that damage buff by half a second each cast, so you're pretty much able to get every cast to be 20 second, or buff proc to be, instead of the baseline of 10 seconds, a full 20 seconds. This is a bonus that gives you 15% increased damage, and also this Holy Power refunding. So you're going to be casting a lot more Shield of the Righteous casts, like a lot more Shield of the Righteous casts thanks to this tier set. So just to compare that to the old tier set gave you a bit of extra Shield of the Righteous damage, more importantly, like 3% damage reduction, kind of who cares on that front. But then also the 4-piece gave you just kind of extra damage during Avenging Wrath. So that extra damage during Avenging Wrath synergized really well with Lightsmith, because Lightsmith, when you cast Avenging Wrath, will summon an extra sacred weapon on you and just give you a lot of extra damage, right? So the thing about that is that really concentrated a lot of your burst damage into those wings windows, and then your damage was kind of a lot lower outside of them. Templar basically shifts a lot more of your damage to just kind of be evenly spread throughout time, throughout the course of a fight. You have a buff that you're able to maintain pretty easily, actually. Shake the Heavens. It makes it so that when you cast Hammer of Light, you start calling down hammers on nearby targets, and thanks to Wrathful Descent, if they crit, they splash that damage to enemies and actually give you a little bit of damage reduction that's really easy to maintain, so that's pretty good. Higher Calling makes it so that Crusader Strike, Hammer of Wrath, and Judgment will extend Shake the Heavens. And Hammerfall makes it so that when you Shield of the Righteous or Word of Glory while Shake the Heavens is active, you call down 2 hammers instead of 1. And anytime you cast Shield of the Righteous, you also just get a hammer, so that's pretty good. So you have this really good synergy with your new 4-piece. And then Light's Deliverance makes it so that whenever you call down hammers, you get a stack of a buff, and when you hit 60 stacks, you're able to call down a free hammer. So it becomes really easy to maintain 100% uptime on Shake the Heavens. Even without the tier set bonus, I've been able to do that pretty easily, but it's really, really easy with the tier set bonus. And this is just going to add up to a lot of damage. It's going to add up to a lot of splash damage thanks to Wrathful Descent, and actually some good damage reduction, which, you know, I'm not upset about that. And so on that note, kind of talking about the 2 hero specs, I think prior to unlocking the new tier set bonus, I think Lightsmith is still the better option. It's been the better option for pretty much all of Season 1, and at least as long as you're still running the old tier set bonuses, I think you're better off sticking with Lightsmith. But once you have swapped to the new tier set bonuses, I think you're going to switch to Templar immediately. And I would do that even on just getting the new 2-piece, breaking the old 4-piece, I would swap over to Templar. And once you're running Templar, you absolutely have to run Eye of Tyr and Inmost Light, because that's how Templar works. You press Eye of Tyr, then you get Hammer of Light as a cast for the next 12 seconds. You're able to cast it. It does a massive amount of damage, and then, you know, starts off the whole Shake the Heavens chain reaction. So if you're playing Lightsmith, you don't have to take Inmost Light. However, most of the time you would take Uther's Counsel, and that point just isn't very good anymore, so I think you're justified in taking Inmost Light as Lightsmith. I think the only thing I would maybe take instead is, depending on the rest of your talent configuration, just take Moment of Glory instead as kind of a, I don't know, go-to offensive cooldown as an alternative. And I'll just jump into the talent setups that I prefer to play. So this is my go-to Mythic Plus setup as Templar. So I just want to show off one thing that people do a little bit differently in high-level Mythic Plus, and this can be something that might be misleading for some players, and that's this cluster of talents here, and then also kind of the 1 point thrown into Tyr's Enforcer. So Sanctuary gives you Consecration after you walk out of it, like I can show that off. I have it on me, then I walk out of it, and now it's still on. So that damage reduction is still active. Very useful in raid when you have to move around. Also, Consecration and Flame just makes it easier to maintain Consecration and gives you a bit more damage. This is good, not amazing. So in Mythic Plus, a lot of higher level players like to take Faith in the Light, because if you're able to get to 70% block chance, which you can get to 60% with like 10,800 mastery, and then another 10% will come for free from Barricade of Faith. So if you cast Word of Glory and you have that block chance, you'll be at 100%, which means you can pre-wog on any sort of hard-hitting, you know, would kill you tank mechanic, and then you're guaranteed to block it and you won't die. This is really, from a design standpoint, dumb. There's no way around it. Pre-wogging when you're at full health so that you are then able to block the next hit, it just doesn't make sense. Like pre-death striking to build up a shield, it's just an annoying design concept. Everybody hates it, but it does work. It is good. So it is a thing that people do. Also, you're able to take Tyrion's Devotion, which, when you're playing Lightsmith, you get a bit of extra cooldown reduction on Lay on Hands from laying down arms. There are some other things that give you Lay on Hands cooldown reduction, like Unbreakable Spirit. So, you know, you're able to get a bunch of Lay on Hands cooldown reduction and just kind of give yourself, like, a lot more value out of Lay on Hands, out of Imperial Ward. A lot of good stuff out of this little talent configuration. But for lower level Mythic Plus, if you're just doing your weekly completion keys, you probably don't need that WOG block tech in order to live through most hits. So it's usually not taken for kind of lower level stuff. You're better off with just the quality of life that comes from Sanctuary and Consecration and Flame. But it's up to you. I mean, even if you're not at the block cap, getting 30% block chance after you WOG is still kind of nice, even in the intended usage. as opposed to being like mandatory for high level pushing in the kind of weird, annoying usage. Now, as for raid, this is my sort of progression raid oriented talent setup here. So a couple of things that swap. Switching from Blessed Hammer over to Hammer of the Righteous is just like a big single target damage increase. If you're pushed out of melee range a whole bunch or you're in AoE, then Blessed Hammer is still good. Putting more points into Tears Enforcer, just kind of giving yourself some more damage, can be good. Seal of Reprisal is actually a really good point as well, in conjunction with Hammer of the Righteous, so you can take that. 2, if you're doing any sort of AoE at all, then you're going to want Soaring Shield. If you're really doing a lot of AoE tanking, the Strength and Adversity to give yourself that parry chance is also good. Crusader's Resolve, the alternative option, is terrible. Never take it, ever. And then, you may not ever need Final Stand. That's really up to you. So you can swap some things around. I think like a talent setup that could look toward doing more damage could potentially look like this, dropping some of these things like Final Stand, and Gift of the Golden Valkyr to get over here to take Moment of Glory and kind of use that as an extra offensive cooldown. It's kind of a fun cooldown. I like it in Mythic Plus too. I don't really ever use it. The Final Stand is so easy to use, but you could potentially, for lower level keys, run Moment of Glory for lower level keys or like easy bosses, heroic boss parsing, that kind of thing. Moment of Glory can be very good because it just gives you a lot more Avengers Shield cooldown reduction and damage, and then a bit of shielding based on all the damage you do. So it's kind of an all-purpose cooldown, but it's not really up for a very long period of time. 15 seconds every 90, not really that amazing. Over here in the left-hand tree, there's a lot of utility you can kind of swap around. You can switch to Sacrifices of the Just, especially in Mythic Plus. This is really, really good. You can take Bop, you can take Imp Bop, even if you need it for different fights. That can be really good. There's a lot of utility that I'm taking in here, things like Light's Revocation, where I'm just taking this because it gives you the ability to Divine Shield while Forbearance is active, so I can do this. Oops, I accidentally fat-fingered Lay on Hands, no problem, I can still div. You don't have to take it, it's just something you can take. Lightbearer, kind of another thing. It's just generically more healing spread out to some allies. That can be useful in Raid, not really as great in Mythic Plus. And then Of Dusk and Dawn is kind of the only one of these 3 capstone, keystone talents that's truly, truly valuable. So in terms of the rotation for Prot Pally, it's pretty much the same as it has been. You want to maintain Shield of the Righteous and Consecration all the time because those are your 2 big defensive bonuses. You want to spend Judgment. You want to use Judgment as much as you can, and Avenger Shield as much as you can, and then pretty much just fill with Hammer of the Righteous or maintaining Consecration. Pretty basic there. You want to use your Wings and your Eye of Tyr and any other offensive cooldowns as much as you possibly can. The only cooldown you might ever really find yourself sitting on is potentially Eye of Tyr if you really need it for a defensive cooldown, but if you're playing Templar, you're pretty much never going to do that. Divine Toll, that's kind of the one that you might sit on. If you know ads are going to spawn, you would wait on that, or if you know there's a situation where you're going to really need to interrupt at the start of the next pull, you can kind of hold on to it and just like save it for later for a big burst AoE interrupt bonanza. Alright, now just to hit on stats for Protection Paladin. Haste is your best stat. By far, it is the most important. Mastery is good. There's kind of a thing in high-level Mythic Plus where you really want to get to that 10,800 mastery breakpoint. I think it's less if you're playing with a shaman. I think it's like low 9,000s, you're like 9,200 or something. But you're trying to get, enough mastery to guarantee that you can hit the 100 block chance with the annoying Word of Glory situation. But if you're not doing that, then Haste Crit, Haste Verse, Haste Mastery, they're all pretty similar to each other, and ultimately I would just send myself and kind of go for whatever gives me the most damage because the defensive value is all relatively same, basically the same. Ultimately, the most important thing when it comes to gear is just going for the highest item level pieces. Alright, that pretty much covers it. Paladin is fantastic. It's also super fun to play. Like, it's not just strong, it is, I think, the most fun tank. That's what I would argue, at least. I mean, that's my opinion, right? You might disagree. I might disagree in a month or two, but at least right now it's my number 1, and I'm very excited to be maining it for the upcoming season. It's just so strong in dungeons, especially with less coordinated groups. Avenger's Shield is able to cover so many mistakes that other players make. Sacrifice and spell warding and lay on hands as well. They all just really make it so you can carry a group on your back. And it doesn't feel like torture like it might on some other classes. It really just feels like you're doing your job. Alright, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it. And if you want to support us even further, consider becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching. Bye.